Hi, I'm Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this is Patient. This is Dana Dayton we're talking with today. She has a hell of a story, so sit down, get yourself a cup of coffee, and buckle up. Dana is the Director of Communications and Engagement at the Melanoma Research Alliance. We're going to talk about that. But she is also a member of the terrible and wonderful club we're fellow members of, the Stage 4 Cancer, let's call ourselves survivors, right? Maybe
Absolutely.
club. Dana, where to begin? I want to start actually with your story because this was, I think, the thing that kind of radicalized you, right?
Definitely. Where would you like me to start?
Start with the call, the moment your life changes.
Yeah, well, like you, I was a young mom. I had three young kids. When I was 42, I started to feel quite unwell. I had a lot of symptoms that were lupus-like. I had severe joint pain that just kind of came out of nowhere. I had the malar rash across my face and the rash on the back of my neck. And to me, that lupus diagnosis was terrible. Like I was like, I do not have time for all of this. I really don't. I'm working full time. I'm raising three kids and I have lots to do. And I knew how debilitating it could be. So I quickly got to a rheumatologist and one said, yes, it's definitely lupus. And he got me started on hydroxychloroquine. Another, because I like to seek lots of opinions. Another said, no, it's not lupus at all, but I don't know what it is. And then a third said, yeah, I think it's pre-lupus. And nobody really knows what that means. So fast forward, the medicine that the first doctor did prescribe actually did seem to help until it didn't. So for about 6 months, I felt much better. I continued to work and take care of my kids all the way through that. At the time, and for many years after, I was working at National Geographic Society in Washington, D.C. And then on the day that it stopped working, it was just like a freight train hit me and different symptoms started to unfold. And they were kind of debilitating abdominal discomfort, not cramps, not constipation, not nausea. It was just this discomfort or this ache that kind of wrapped around my midsection. And I referred to it as like somebody was squeezing or wringing out a washcloth. And it didn't really relent. And I went to the doctor. I had a gastroenterologist. I'm not going to take you through everything, but we pretty much knew it was not colon cancer because I had previous and recent screenings done. And so she suggested it was IBD, but I sort of knew in my heart that it wasn't. And it became so uncomfortable that I really had trouble sitting. I had trouble standing. The only thing I could do is kind of lay on my back with my arms and legs sort of in my center to kind of distribute weight a little bit differently. And by the way, I wasn't overweight. I wasn't a drinker, wasn't a smoker. I was really in good health and had exercised all the time. Well, the symptoms kept progressing, kept getting worse. One day I just kind of went like this. And I was like, "Oh, I feel awful." And I didn't know what to do or where to turn. And for some reason, I felt this lump in my neck, the cervical node. And it was like the size of like half of a golf ball. And I knew at that time something was really wrong. I still didn't have an oncologist, but I knew I had to get somewhere. So I started with a primary. They did, the ultrasound, the fine needle biopsy, all of it, returned kind of ominous results, but none of it returned anything specific. And so, of course, then I had it removed, and the mystery continued, and the diagnostic odyssey continued because the markers in that biopsy were very frayed. They didn't really know what to think. The first thing they think of with like a 43-year-old woman is ovarian cancer, breast cancer, maybe lung cancer, maybe brain cancer, maybe cancer of an undiagnosed primary, maybe cancer of two primaries. I mean, I started to see a lot of different experts, and they were like, wow, I don't know. We just don't know what to do with you. And even though I had a recent colonoscopy, I had never had an endoscopy. I had a lot of other tests done. And then at the last minute had an upper GI. And that's when like everything came together and it showed like the little volcano erupting at my GI junction. And while it explained a lot, wow, it brought absolutely no peace because stage 4 esophageal cancer, which, I knew enough at the time to know that if it was in my abdomen and in my cervical nodes, it had reached far beyond the primary. And like you, I was told, really sorry that we have to give you this news. Prognosis is not good. We really recommend that, you get on some treatment, to make you more comfortable. We'll even talk about palliative care. You need to, find a way to enjoy the time with your kids because you probably don't have much more than a year. And, really the world stops and it's almost as if, yeah, this, like you're kind of in the middle of this merry-go-round. You're stationary and the world is going around you. And it's really like the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So after that, I did figure out I've got to get to an academic center, which I urge everybody with a serious and advanced diagnosis to do, and not just one, keep going. Because a lot of times when you have advanced cancer, like we both did, there's no one path, and you really have to find a team that is willing to all row in the same direction and as hard as you are. And you have to find a multidisciplinary team because it takes all different kinds of minds and experiences. And as good as every, renowned physician is on paper, they haven't seen everything. They've seen what they've seen at their institution. And, most of them luckily haven't had a cancer diagnosis themselves. So you really have to find that team where everybody can kind of help you negotiate or navigate every part of the journey. So I kind of hopscotched around, as you know. I won't go into all of that detail, but through some amazing, miracles, somebody connected me with a team that I felt comfortable with. And the physician who, I still see often, the very first time somebody connected to me to him, I was at a baseball game for my son, a little league game, and I got this phone call and I saw this number that I didn't recognize, and he said, "Hi Dana, this is Dr. So and so. How can I help you?" And I knew right then and there I had found my team. And it was still a journey, still a process after that. This was back now in 2013, and I literally have been in treatment, up until about 2020. So a very long ordeal with chemo, radiation. I had an esophagectomy, which was a 15-hour surgery that kind of tore apart my insides and put the good stuff back together, took the bad stuff out. That is relatively unheard of for stage 4 patients. But I wanted it bad because I really felt like we had to get that mothership out. And from there, I felt like maybe I had a chance. And one thing I tell people every day is that you got to keep fighting for every day. You've got to find a way to be as healthy as you can every day. Do something, whether it's walk a mile, walk a block, unload the dishwasher, carry the laundry upstairs. Do something that will support your health because that science is working behind the scenes and it's working really hard. So you've got to give it a chance to catch up and leapfrog ahead of your cancer. And that's exactly what happened to me because even though I had this very successful surgery, diseases like melanoma and like esophageal cancer and so many others are really tricky and they are devious.
They play
And
dirty.
yes, my cancer found a way to come back after all of that. A year later, it popped up on a scan, really tiny, but it was there. And at that point, my whole team was like, darn, like we've thrown everything at you. You've handled it. And now we got to figure something else out. And through some more amazing good fortune, my physician team had the foresight to say, you know what, let's check your MSI status because there's this new thing out there called immunotherapy. And it has been tested and used successfully in melanoma which has kept you here with us, which is awesome, and in lung cancer, but it had not been approved for esophageal yet. But they said, let's see if we can get it for you. And sure enough, my MSI status was high. They started a letter writing campaign to the drug makers. And I'm grateful every single day that I was able to receive Opdivo, nivolumab, off trial through compassionate use. And I was on it for a long time because nobody else knew what to do with me. But had it not been for all of the work and everything you advocated for yourself in your own journey, getting immunotherapy, I wouldn't be here. So I'm so grateful to you, and I'm so grateful to the melanoma community and all of the scientists and researchers that brought this to bear. And that's why I tell people you just have to keep hanging on just another day because science is working fast.
Science is working
So
fast,
that's
and
it.
I can't tell you, Dana, it's always so moving to me as one of the canaries in the coal mine
Mhm.
to hear a story like yours, to know that we come back from it, we can come back from it,
Absolutely.
and other people get to go into that coal mine too. You are probably the only person I know personally who has been on immunotherapy longer than I have and had more infusions than I did. You are a real one. Tell me how long you were on immunotherapy and how many infusions?
About 5 years. So probably, if you do the math, it's 26 times five because it was every other week. So, that's probably like 140, 150 infusions.
Yeah, and for context, a typical protocol, approved protocol can be four.
Wow, that's amazing. I've lost track. That's truly amazing.
Right?
I know it doesn't work for everybody, but I'm so glad it works for so many. And as I think I might have mentioned to you one time, I had the incredible honor of meeting your physician, Dr. Wolchuk, who was the pioneer behind this, or among several. And I mean, that's like meeting Bono to me, like that's just amazing because these people like are so determined and they see these opportunities and they take them and they work so hard to, you know, just test everything and make sure that it's the right thing for people like you and me. And I think it's just, that's why I'm here. That's why you're here. Otherwise, we'd have a much different story. People would probably be reading about it in, posthumously. And
But
yeah,
it wasn't a smooth ride. You
no,
had a couple of challenges along the way, both with physicians and with insurance. I think that is a common, I want to say universal experience, certainly in the
probably.
US. Give me a little bit of that, of what you had to go through, because it was not a smooth path for you. It was frustrating.
It, it wasn't. And I'll just start by saying, overall, I was so fortunate that we had insurance through, an employer. And for the most part, it kind of worked. But yes, there were bumps in the road. One specific time that I remember so clearly was towards the end of chemo that I was receiving. I had already been through about 8 cycles, and it was a tough chemo. And I had done a lot of research and reading, which I encourage people to do if they feel like they can, because it just educates you more and it gives you more questions to ask your physicians. And so I was at an interval where it was time for a scan to see what the resolution was looking like, hopeful resolution. And I said, I would really rather have a PET scan than a CT scan. And my oncologist said, we don't do that at this interval. And it's really of no use anyway, because we never send stage 4 patients to radiation or surgery. So it's really not necessary. And I said, yeah, but I think I can get there and I want to get there. And I know that this PET scan is going to give us more precise detail that's going to help inform the next steps. And he said, sorry, it's not going to work. So I said, go ahead. I'm in a place where I'm willing to pay out of pocket. I'm going to do it because I need this information. And I'm going to take this information wherever I need to take it to see what other paths might be available. So I did. And luckily, he did end up supporting me when I appealed it with the insurance company. He wrote a letter, a few other physicians that I had consulted with wrote a letter, and I'm so grateful for them. But I was the one who had to defend my case in person in front of a panel of physicians, oncologists, insurance, experts and adjusters and people who deny these things every day of the week. And it was one of the most intimidating things I've ever had to do. And I had to do it not feeling well from my office at work, door closed, not let anybody know I was doing it, but I had to do it. And I won. And I still have the stack of paperwork that I had collected with all of the information and evidence and things that I had read. And because it's just kind of like a good luck thing now. And you know what? That information that I got out of the PET scan, it did help me get to the next step. So I'm so glad I listened to my gut.
And being, having to do that, and I think so many of us have that experience where we are having to literally fight for our lives
Absolutely.
when we are at our most emotionally low, physically low, and the kids still need to get to school.
You bet.
Yeah. And this
Bills have
kids,
to be paid.
yep, everything, like nothing stops just
Nope.
because we get sick. We don't get to take that off ramp. I want to detour a little bit because I think you and I, of course, need to say a few words about melanoma.
Absolutely.
Whatever time of year it is, whatever the clouds or not clouds overhead are, we need to be thinking about it. I always feel like people do not take melanoma seriously enough. I, as the palest person in the world, did not take it seriously enough. As a person who was wearing, full body sunscreen her entire life, did not take it seriously enough. What do you, as someone who works so deeply with this community, want people to know about what we should be looking for when it comes to melanoma symptoms? What is kind of surprising? What you've learned.
Yeah. Well, I've only been in the melanoma space about a year and a half now. And, the route to this position with the Melanoma Research Alliance was a little bit circuitous. I had been working in the medical research area, but not specifically melanoma. And at first I was like, you know what? I don't know if I speak melanoma, but as it turns out, for all the reasons we just chatted about with immunotherapy and stage 4 cancers, like it turns out we have a lot in common. And so I was able to dive in and, melanoma, it is one of the most common cancers in the United States. As you know very well, over 100,000 will be diagnosed with it every year. And in this year that we're in, people are still using tanning beds. They are still tanning to get the glow or the color that sun-kissed color. But the other thing people need to know is that melanoma is also the most preventable cancer. All you have to do is be smart. You can still be outside, but you need to protect your skin with SPF sunscreen, 30 or higher. You can wear UV protective clothing. You can wear a hat and sunglasses. It's really important to protect your eyes because uveal melanoma is so incredibly deadly. It does not have a good prognosis. And it also is, kind of the one of the little subsets of melanoma that still needs a lot of research. So protect those eyes, wear your hat, seek shade when you can. Doesn't mean you have to turn down outside invitations to the beach or the barbecue or anything like that, but just be really smart about it. And, we've made huge advances in melanoma thanks to you and Dr. Wolchak and so many others. I mean, it's been amazing to watch this happen in the last, what, 15 years? Not
Hmm.
much more, right?
No.
I mean, people were dying all the time before, the immunotherapy, and now we've got the TIL therapy, we've got CAR T cell therapy because of the research that people continue to do. We are so very proud at the Melanoma Research Alliance. We support the best and the brightest in the world that are dipping their toe into melanoma research or have been doing it for decades. We've already supported over 175 million in melanoma research, and that equals over 500 projects at 165 institutions around the world. And, our DNA, our thumbprint, excuse me, is on the 17 approved therapies that have come about since our founding in 2005. So we are just so proud, to be in the space and be able to say that progress has been made. But the kicker is people with advanced melanoma, are still struggling and still suffering, and not everybody who receives these therapies that we've talked about is benefiting. About 50% of people are still, yeah, they're
That's
still
where I was going to go. It's
not getting the
still,
treatments they need.
yeah.
They either have treatment resistance
Mhm.
or some mutation, that doesn't respond well to immunotherapy or one of the other current therapies that we have. And we've got to help them. People are dying, people that are moms and dads, who have young kids because this is a
And young people
disease.
themselves, it's a young
Yeah,
person's disease. Yeah, the fact
exactly.
that I think when we talk about the success of melanoma research, for which, Dana, I am so grateful to organizations like MRA, the Cancer
Thank
Research
you.
Institute, all of these people pulling together to really make such a huge impact. And yet, I always still want to stress that the prognosis, if you have metastatic melanoma, is still pretty dire. It's quite dire.
Absolutely.
That it has
Absolutely.
changed exponentially. It is much better than when I was diagnosed in 2011, and yet it is still one of the deadliest forms of cancer you can be diagnosed with. I want to talk to you about your advocacy too, because when we think about these systems that we're in, that are so frustrating, that are so intimidating, that are so scary, when we think about getting sick into in America right now, you do so much other work. And I want to talk about some of the other things that you are involved with that we can get involved with.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. Yeah, I'm a pretty hardcore advocate, not just in my disease space, but in sort of all of oncology, because it's my mom died of cancer before my diagnosis. So I've seen a lot of it, and it's very painful, and it's very hard for people to navigate these diagnoses on their own. And I also am a big believer in research because research saved your life, it saved my life, and so many others. But there are other people, like we just said, that still need answers, especially people, with rare or recalcitrant cancers. We can't let research stop there. And unfortunately, right now, with things that are going on at the FDA and NCI, it's not looking great. Dollars are being cut from incredible research that was already underway or about to get started. And this research, it's not willy-nilly research. These are people that have dedicated their careers and they've proven that they have an idea that might actually have a payoff if they're allowed to do the research. And many of them do so, at universities. And those dollars are being cut, which means that research will be stalled. And it also means that new treatments might not reach the people that need them the most. And it's just heartbreaking to see, people that were sort of, kind of next in line to receive this treatment, whether it was on trial or just off trial, not be able to get it. Like their lives are in the balance and people will die, families will suffer and be broken apart. And it's just not right. So, in addition to some of the work I do with esophageal cancer advocacy, I also do a lot with the Target Cancer Foundation, which is based in Boston. And many of us there have joined a little committee called Paying with Our Lives. And we have put together a toolkit for people that want to jump in and help. It shows them how to, send in a video. We're looking for videos from every state. We're asking them to please write their representatives in Congress to advocate to save medical research for, all cancers, but definitely these hard to treat cancers. And, in melanoma, there are subsets like uveal melanoma, acral melanoma, mucosal melanoma that were already underfunded and under researched. We can't afford to lose more. We actually need to build it. And so I would really encourage everybody who is interested in helping to save funding for cancer research to join us to check out this site. I'm going to give you the website. You can go to Target Cancer Foundation and go to Get Involved, and I will give you the
We will have
exact.
a, yeah, we'll have a link to it in the show notes. Don't worry
Okay,
about it.
perfect, perfect. So it's been really fulfilling to work with these amazing advocates, much like you, who are just doing everything to break down barriers, get more people involved. Patient voices really do matter. Caregiver voices really do matter. And, the fact of the matter is that pretty much everybody is going to be affected by cancer. And it doesn't matter what your political party is, cancer doesn't care. Cancer is going to jump in unexpectedly and ruin somebody's life. So we all need treatment options and we all need research and we all need access. Shouldn't matter, what your party is, what your job is, if you have a job or not. Like everybody needs help. And it just escapes me how, that is lost on some people. No
Yeah,
amount of money is going to save you.
no, that's the other thing is it's not necessarily a question of money. And if you are black and brown, uh,
Mhm.
your outcomes are going to be worse and money won't make a difference there either. Like populations are disproportionately affected.
Absolutely.
All of those things we need to be looking at and we need to be addressing. I'm going to make sure that we have links to the Melanoma Research Alliance
Thank
and to
you.
Target Cancer in our show notes. I also want to take a moment to remember my friend Tracy, who died of uveal cancer,
Mm,
of uveal melanoma a couple of years ago. We were on the same protocol. We were fellow redheads. She was a mother of three. It was working for her, and then it didn't. It is one of the deadliest, nastiest forms of melanoma.
it really is.
It is a real, it's a real jerk. And I'm so grateful to people like you who are on the front lines really working to move the needle and to change it,
Thank you.
Dana.
We've formed a UVL task force, so we are still trying to drive hard there and do more. And I think you're going to see some really interesting things coming down the road, in the melanoma space, but specifically from the Melanoma Research Alliance. And if you want to learn more or do more or lend your voice, go to curemelanoma.org. We'd love to hear from you for sure. It's really important to have patients involved. We get a lot of insights. We ask them to join our focus groups, help us, review language because we want to make everything as patient friendly as it can be. We want people to benefit from it who need it.
Dana, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for everything you do in general and being such an inspiration. You really are. You're an absolute badass. And I'm so grateful to you for your example and for your work and for just taking time in your unbelievably busy life, a million things to do, to just take a couple of minutes to talk to me today and to talk to our listeners because it's all so important and we need to just know what our options are and what is out there because we do have to advocate for ourselves. It's not, we're not in systems that are going to really necessarily go out there and find those treatments for us. And as hard as that
Absolutely.
is in our weakest and hardest moments, we need to know that there are choices and there are options and to find our teams, as you said.
Absolutely.
Find your
Well,
team.
I appreciate you, kind of ending on that. I want to just also say what an inspiration you are. And just a quick little side note and let people know that I knew you before I knew you because your amazing book, A Series of Catastrophes and Miracles, did I say it right?
You did.
Was published by National Geographic, my former employee. And somebody handed me the book and I was all in. I read it in one sitting and I was like, she's my girl. This is my world. And thank you for bringing it all to life and sharing, the heartache and the hope with so many because it certainly helped me. I was a little bit behind you in treatment. So I got so much from it and I continue to recommend it to people. And I just love that, it's sort of like we were, connected
We were
at birth.
friends. We
So
were friends before we knew we were
yes,
friends. Dana, you're my
exactly.
girl too. Thank you so, so much for joining me today. I
Well,
very much appreciate it. And come back. There's so much more to talk about. I know we'll have another conversation soon.
I would love to. Can't wait. And wonderful that you are doing so many great things. So good luck to you.
Thank you, Dana.